Welcome to another episode of Mining Now. Today we are joined by Cameron Stockman. He is the Director of Operations and Business Development at Responsible Mining Solutions Corporation, also known as RMS Corp. He's here to walk us through their services from engineering to mine tailings and design construction to modular design, skid-mounted, and containerized plants. But before we continue, let's thank our sponsors. Today we are sponsored by CIM. CIM is the leading membership organization for technical content and creating connections in the mining industry. Mining professionals and students can access a breadth of technical expertise through the CIM Technical Paper Library, the OneMine Digital Repository, the CIM Journal, and the CIM Magazine, and also attend upcoming CIM webinars. Whether you're working in the field, in the office, or at home, join the community today and learn how they can help you achieve your professional goals. Visit them at cim.org. Next up, we also have Savannah Equipment. Savannah Equipment supplies new and used mining equipment around the world, from placer to underground to ore processing plants. They have gold concentrating tables, trommels, and mineral jigs in stock now to take advantage of the high gold prices. You can visit them at savannahequipment.com, where you will find more equipment every day. And last but not least, we have PowerZone Equipment. When you need a specialized team of world-class engineers for your oil and gas pipelines, dewatering, or any fluid handling needs, you want to visit powerzone.com. In addition to their inventory of rebuilt pumps, motors, engines, they also have an amazing team to design and engineer your systems, no matter the challenge, no matter the location. Get in the zone with PowerZone. Visit them at powerzone.com. Well, let's get on with this episode of Mining Now.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Mining Now. I am your host, Jerrod Downey. Today we have Cameron Stockman on the show. Cameron, you are the Director of Operations and Business Development at Responsible Mining Solutions. Thank you for joining the show. How are you?
Yeah, thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
This is quite a bit we're going to cover. We're actually going to talk a little bit about the sort of the macro level of the industry. And I mean, obviously, there's a rise in gold prices right now. So that's sort of a whole new opportunity that I don't think anybody saw coming in 2020 for the mining industry. Before we jump into all that, can you just talk about Responsible Mining Solutions? Let's get that snapshot of who they are and what they offer the mining industry, and then we'll move in from there.
Yeah, sure. So Responsible Mining Solutions is a Vancouver-based technology integration, engineering, and project delivery company. And we specialize in holistic mine waste management. So our focus really is in the design and execution of tailor-made solutions for alternative tailings management systems, which often includes dewatered tailings for deposition on surface in the form of thickened and filtered tailing systems, and underground in the form of underground paste backfill or other forms of backfill for tailings.
Okay. What's sort of the setup of the company? You're based in Vancouver. Do you have a facility here? And like, what is sort of your offering locally here? Because I'm obviously in BC as well.
Yeah, so our head office is located downtown Vancouver. And we also have a tailings specific laboratory based in Burnaby, right off of Lake Cityway SkyTrain station. And our engineering and project delivery is spanning a couple countries at the moment, with capacity in Latin America and South Africa as well.
Can you talk a little bit about that testing facility? I hope I'm not speaking wrong here. Maybe I've got the wrong site, but that's sort of a unique thing. There's not a lot of locations that are doing that out in Western Canada. Do I have that right?
Yeah. So, I mean, there are not a lot of companies in our industry that specialize in the sort of work that we do. But here in British Columbia, RMS's lab is really the only tailings specialized lab. In that facility, we conduct characterization, dewatering, rheology. We have bench and pilot scale equipment for process flow sheet development, and actually the company is in the process of constructing a system known as a pump loop or a paste loop, which has the capacity for both uncemented and cemented tailings pumping transport. And there actually is no facility that has one of those in our province currently.
I'm always curious when people, when a company offers something that sort of, that obviously it separates them from competition and things like that. What sort of led to seeing that opportunity to put this facility and now expanding on that facility out here? Where was sort of the, I don't think inspiration is the right word for it, but for lack of a better one, what sort of made that decision for you as a company to develop that facility?
Yeah, I mean, there was lots of ideas with respect to location or placement of our lab. The primary sort of investment case for us was the engineering houses and owner operators that are based in Vancouver. Typically, in the past, had to either export those samples to the United States or ship them to Eastern Canada, and a lot of owners, a lot of engineers, wish to have physical oversight of those sorts of laboratory programs. So our positioning is kind of a proximity play for those companies based here in the Lower Mainland who, from downtown Vancouver can hop on the SkyTrain in 20 minutes throughout the lab and back by lunch if they wish to have that sort of oversight and ensure that the quality assurance that they want is in place with our technicians and with what we're executing in the lab.
Did you get a pretty good response right off the bat as soon as you went into operation? Has it gotten pretty good feedback?
Yeah, so our company was incorporated in 2017. Since then, we've been able to bring up the volume in that facility. We've invested through organic growth and cash flow generated from operations. So no external investment really to stand up the lab, and it's been able to stand on its own 2 feet actually and grow over the past number of years. And we've got clients throughout the world: Australia, Latin America, Sub-Saharan Africa, and here in North America as well, specifically Canada and the US.
I want to jump into the gold prices because we're not a show. We're not really taught. We don't have a lot of junior mining companies on and things like that. So the gold price is not usually we're focusing on the technology side, but in your case, I mean you're sort of on that ground level of development in the mining industry. So could you talk a little bit about just the shift? I mean that we've talked. 2019, we would have been having a completely different conversation. So can you just talk about that shift?
Yeah, our industry has kind of been through the gamut in 2020 thus far. A lot of people were very uncertain at the outset of COVID, given the relatively rocky start to Q1 entering into Q2. We saw lots of projects, have significant delays or budget increases due to supply chain interruptions, workshop and supplier shutdowns, logistics and shipping backlogs. But really, through the real quarantine period on the first wave here in Canada, it was quickly really determined that mining is an essential service, and I believe really has become a leader with respect to other industries in terms of being able to operate in that sort of next normal landscape that was relatively unfamiliar at the outset of 2020. So what we saw is a lot of companies, whether they be owners or engineering companies or suppliers, really pivot quite dramatically through that period and accommodate new technologies and new processes to account for the changes that they were experiencing. And this was all sort of backed up throughout the spring and the summer in an increasing price in precious metals. And when that sort of confluence of events really starts to happen, we start to see a critical mass start to generate within the industry. September, we've seen a little bit of a retraction in gold price, but a lot of people have strong commitment to the fundamentals of precious metals moving forwards. And it's really enabled a lot of projects that we've been working with to accelerate their activities pretty dramatically. A number of projects that had maybe published a PFS or an FS in 2019 with a marginal or lower than expected IRR or NPV, now are projects that are becoming very rapidly shovel ready for construction due to these higher margins that are now being able to be reported by some of the senior producers, and the expectations from some of the mid-tier and junior companies. Our industry is relatively interesting because it's a capital competitive industry. The money goes to the best projects because investors, as they should, are desiring the best returns that they can invest a dollar in, and really this marginal increase in profitability has enticed new investors to the industry. And moreover, a lot of companies that we're now working with, because of these higher operating margins, are able to pay through their own cash flow.
Yeah,
Either
I want to talk about that. Yeah,
or new project development. So it allows added flexibility for them to not need to go to external financing to justify these new capital projects.
Because there was such a reliance on external funding within the mining industry. It's been that way now for a long time, and I'm not an expert on the funding streams that are coming in, but obviously talking to so many people, all the events, the reliance. But even like your facility said, it was able to come up on its own. Now all of a sudden, these projects that they were so reliant, it's almost like having to spend your whole life. Again, talking to some of these junior miners. I mean, they're just, all their time is being spent on raising capital. And then all of a sudden there's actually an opportunity to internally generate revenue. I mean, that's a major shift that hasn't really been there for a long time, if I have that right.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the doldrums of the industry, have made their mark on how companies, deal with investors and raising money. And we're finding that, a lot of companies are able to focus on those internal projects now, on optimization and expansion, grade recovery and other development projects that either impact the bottom line or impact efficiency of their businesses. So it's great to see that that's been able to really become rock solid in the last couple of months.
For you, just for what RMS is offering, does it allow? How would I put this question? I might do the rough version. I'll let you unpack it for me. Does it allow for you to offer services that then set that company up? Because obviously it is a cyclical business. It's not going to stay high forever. It's not going to stay low forever. Does it allow you to help your clients prepare more for when there's another downturn, there's another challenge? Do you feel that your company could sort of offer that preparation now, because while these companies are starting to go on the upward tick?
Well, I think a lot of internal development projects, there is a justification or an investment case that typically is presented either to senior management or to the board of directors. And in a lot of cases, you need to invest capital in order to lower your operating cost. And if you're in a scenario where, that capital is a little bit harder to come by, not always can those companies access those efficiencies that could come through additional capital investment. So, what we're hoping is that, the investment thesis cases that we're generating for our customers allow for, and again, this added flexibility to pay for those through free cash flow or retained earnings, allows them to do them sooner and prepare themselves for when those margins might not be, high in the future. And as you say, the interesting thing is that we started our first business in the mining sector right at the beginning of the downturn, and scarcity breeds innovation. So a lot of these companies during the downturn had to do things that were novel and unique. And they're now beginning to prepare for spending some of their hard-earned money on development projects that potentially could position them for the next cycle.
Mm-hmm. Transitioning into what really your company specializes in, I want to talk a little bit about the tailings. And I kind of want to do it in two parts, because obviously Well, let's talk about some of the black eyes on the industry, which is always fun to talk about on a mining show. But there's been real challenges with the tailings pond, and there's been a couple very high profile, both here in Canada. There's been in Brazil. We actually just, the show that's going to be released before yours, we talk extensively about it as well. So first, can we just talk about where sort of those failures happen, and then sort of how your company is integrating into sort of to mitigating those, and what you're offering your clients on the tailings and waste management side?
Sure. So I guess on a macro level, you could argue that that tailings facilities and tailings related failures are a significant risk to our industry. In recent years, actually, we've been experiencing catastrophic failures at an increasing rate, not a decreasing rate. And those failures have resulted in loss of life, billions of dollars in remediation costs, or lost market capitalization. And those are real hardline figures that impact both, the financial aspects of the companies that operate within our industry, as well as our reputation internally and externally to ourselves and stakeholders that we need to deal with, whether that be governments or investors or permitting agencies. Mount Poly and Samarco in 2014-15 were kind of a 1-2 punch, but Brumadinho in 2019 was kind of the nail in the coffin for a lot of people that were looking at the mining industry. Those are three of the more high-profile failures, but what people often don't realize is that there's probably been numerous other events that go largely unreported or underreported in our industry because they're in remote jurisdictions or don't have the sort of media coverage that those three particular events did. So you're correct in saying that those sorts of events have been a black eye on the industry, and largely it's prompted numerous multinational, multi-stakeholder responses, including the recent global industry standard on tailings management, the creation of the Investor Mining and Tailings Safety Initiative by the Church of England, and aspects here nationally in Canada, and through global associations of mining professionals, the Global Action on Tailings through the GMPA and CIM. And all of these are associations and task forces that have been assembled to try and identify, first how to mitigate the fallout from some of these events, but also to help to identify alternatives, and help companies, even early stage technology development companies, to commercialize, scale their technology to be able to suit some of the larger mining companies in our industry. And that's sort of where we're at right now. Is there's a variety of technologies and processes that have been validated to some extent, and there's been a lot of investment, both in capital and human resources in that particular space over the past number of years.
There's sort of a term that I kind of learned from you, and I think the industry is standard. It's best available technology and best available practices. Can you just talk? You've kind of already touched on it, but can you just sort of talk on that a little bit more, and in relation to some of these organizations now that are pushing for it? Can you just touch on it a little bit of just what that terminology, of course, what it means? It's sort of a self-explanatory, but can you just unpack it a little bit?
Sure. So the BAT and BAP are kind of part of our mining vocabulary now. They were instituted as sort of controls on selecting tailings management schemes post Mount Poly here in British Columbia by the provincial mining government regulatory agency. But they, as concepts, have now become more widely disseminated in terms of their general use to when a company is beginning to look at how they're going to manage their mine waste, whether that be waste rock, tailings, or spent leach residue, that they go through the appropriate selection criteria and processes to evaluate whether it's economically and technically feasible to select, engineer, and implement what we can call an alternative tailings management system. And alternative is kind of a general catch-all, but generally the general discrepancy between alternative and conventional would be some form of dewatering, whether that be thickening and filtration or thickening alone. But there's a number of different processes, technologies, and arrangement of those processes and technologies in multiple iterations that would permit companies to evaluate these alternatives as their best available technology and best available practices.
I just in layman terms, Cameron, can you just touch on the dewatering, because it's sort of we of course have a large mining audience, but there's going to be a lot of people that they're really not that familiar with tailings pond. So can you just talk about the difference between a dewatering tailings, getting it to, there's like you just said, there's thickened or filtered tailings and all this sort of stuff. Can you just spend a minute just to clarify what that is, and how that differentiates from what they were doing 50 years ago?
Sure. So the past 50 years has seen a great degree of technology adoption in the tailings dewatering space. And interestingly, this challenge will continue to persist in our industry over the coming decades and in perpetuity, because as mining companies, they're having to mine decreasing ore grades, and to account for those, they're increasing mill throughput and tonnage. And there's also declining fresh water availability in lots of these particular jurisdictions, whether it be the Atacama or Sonora in Mexico or sub-Saharan Africa, where a lot of these large copper concentrators are located. So you have a number of factors which have produced larger and larger volumes of tailings, fine tailings, that need to be engineered in a way to allow for them to desiccate naturally and to become stable over time. And what dewatering primarily looks at is a more rapid desiccation process, so solid and liquid separation into their two phases. And it happens along a continuum. So you can pull a small amount of water out of these tailings, or you can pull a lot of water out of these tailings to have higher placed density or percent weight solids, and allow for different techniques in terms of stacking or disposing of these tailings that, theoretically would have lower geotechnical stability risks,
right,
associated with liquefaction or the area to which the tailings can run or flow. And there still is geotechnical stability risks even with filtered tailings, as they're called, because they do contain some degree of water, and we're never going to get down to 0%, by weight moisture. But there are a lot of companies that are looking at, these geotechnical management techniques and various methods of dam construction or stacking of these tailings to mitigate these concerns.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for kind of walking through that. And so RMS now, I want to talk a little bit about the structure, because the term, I've always got notes in front of me. So provide vertical integration between companies. So I'm going to hand that over to you to say, okay, well, you've got technology, you've got strategies, you've got equipment. So can you lay out what RMS, what the company means when they say that they can provide vertical integration?
Yeah. So I would say that the traditional approach to project development requires multiple different stakeholders, whether that be the owner operator, the engineering company, the supplier, the metallurgical lab that does the test work. There's silos which have been established in our industry that a project goes from exploration phase to the engineering phase to construction phase and then to operation. And on the project execution side, we've seen a de-evolution of this concept. Some of the bigger engineering houses that have dissolved into smaller, more specialized firms. And our design of this company has really been focused on from concept to commissioning. And that encompasses all aspects of the project development cycle with respect to tailings management and tailings dewatering applications, from collection and sampling of the materials through the test work development process, basic and detailed engineering phases, equipment procurement and fabrication, and then the construction and commissioning phase of that particular project. And a lot of the stuff that I've seen over the past number of years requires multiple companies to do all of that. And while our company's offering is relatively niche within the industry in that we focus in tailings dewatering, our goal has been to focus on one particular aspect, but to have that deep integration piece so that we have, at the beginning of the project, it's a whiteboard and we have our hands on a particular sample. And at the conclusion of that project, there is a plant that's been stood up on site. And looking at the generation of innovative process flow sheet development and technology selection to allow for that cycle to be concluded, all within the management structure of the business that we've set up.
I've done quite a few interviews talking about the modular designs, especially on not so much on the tailing side, but a lot on the ore processing side. And can you speak a little bit to that? Because it's still, of course it's becoming more common, but can you talk a little bit more about sort of your approach and your view on the modular systems?
Yeah. So, our approach to project development is really been tailored by, our vision of what the market needs are. And coming back to the first two topics that we discussed, the macro drivers that we're experiencing, both an increase in precious metals prices and challenges with respect to tailing storage and identification of alternatives. We've really seen a suite of demands issued to us over the past number of years. Economically and technically feasible alternatives to conventional tailings deposition, proving these technologies at scale and to be able to account for inherent variability in the materials, minimal capital intensity to allow funding of these projects through retained earnings or free cash flow, non-escalative operating costs over the life of the mine, and then getting into the end of it, rapid project deployment to shorten the life cycle of these projects from the concept to the commissioning, right? So what we're trying to do is design engineer systems that are reproducible, scalable, and expandable, because a lot of companies now are rapidly trying to either overcome limitations on tailing storage volumes, and they need to engineer a solution that accounts for dewatering in parallel to running the plant, or they're looking to expand production to take advantage of some of these higher metal prices. So for us, modularity really is about pre-engineering and pre-fabrication to allow for shorter overall project life cycles. Taking something that would take 12 to 14 weeks to conduct basic or detailed engineering and shrinking that time to 4 to 6 weeks so that we can issue for construction drawings and get into the actual civil and steel work for us to stand up a plant. We also find that this modular concept works really, really well with companies that have higher costs of labor. We're able to offshore that prefabrication, conduct field acceptance tests at the warehouse or at the nominated workshop location, and allow for a simplified project schedule or a simplified owner's cost schedule because of the taking those costs on the other side of the ledger. And there's a lot of projects that we've seen that, lump sum EPC for $20 million, but not always does it account for all the owner's side costs that might not be included depending on the battery limits or exclusions by some of these project developers. So what we're attempting to do is to, bring these costs into light and make them transparent, and where possible, reduce the life cycle of projects so that we can implement and commission something in a shorter time frame than other competitors.
I just want to clarify something, Cameron, because I think I understand, but I kind of want to just clarify that when you say you start with a whiteboard, so the company comes, you have a sample, and you sort of know what their end goal is. So I mean, of course, we don't have 2 weeks to go through the entire process, but so I'm going to ask you to compress it down. But you're pulling systems and equipment and technology. You're pulling that in as you develop this, starting from a clean slate. Is that right?
Yeah. So a great example is a project we're in the midst of construction on right now. They came to us with a problem, and that problem was we have nowhere to place our tailings because we don't have a suitable site for construction of a new tailings facility. So we needed to first evaluate, what alternatives exist, whether that be surface storage or underground storage, what the profile of those materials were, how they change over the life of mine, what mine method was being implemented so that we could evaluate whether paste or hydraulic fill or cemented rock fill would be a potential opportunity for them, or deposition of a dewatered filter cake on surface. And where we ended up through characterization, process development, and quite a bit of program running at bench and pilot scale was that their particular tailings material was amenable to a particular form of vacuum filtration that we could prepare a filter cake at 12% to 14% by weight moisture and stack that as an engineered product on site rather than pump it overland into their conventional slurried tailings facility. So that project was really an open whiteboard at the outset. And we'll be commissioning that amidst COVID travel restrictions by the end of this year.
Insane. Yeah, it's an interesting process, and as we sort of get to the tail end of this interview, what is sort of when we first started mining now, and even further back when we were doing the Crownsman show, which featured a lot of mining content on it. There was, I would say, pretty much every guest we had to start, other than a couple younger guests we had, we're talking about younger people getting involved in the industry, taking the lead. Now, I'm not making a judgment, but you do not look like you're 80 years old. So you're sort of in that younger category of the industry. So sort of what is your background and your story for sort of, helping move forward in the industry, integrating these new technologies. Can you just talk a little bit about that story and sort of how you've approached and even challenges you've had as you started out in the industry?
Yeah, I mean, as
easy question.
As you say, I don't look 80, thankfully. But yeah, I mean, as we know, the mining industry is I would say averse to rapid change. Whether that be a good thing or a bad thing could be debated. But a lot of that comes through the sort of generational differences that we see with those that are in senior leadership positions at bigger operators or at engineering companies. And those generational differences are really actually quite interesting to look at because a lot of them are really due to the cyclical nature of our industry. You'll notice there's very few people between the ages of 35 and 45 Why is that? Because that was the time when there was a lot of engineering graduates that couldn't get jobs in mining, and they had to go to pulp and paper or chemical or some
I
other
never thought of
discipline.
it. You're right. Yeah.
So there are these spurts and gaps where there's actually quite few number of qualified people in certain age ranges because of the cyclical nature of the commodity prices and how that impacts people's selection of education and getting work.
Yeah.
So I was kind of fortunate, but unfortunate to enter the industry right at the beginning of the last downturn. So we started our first business in 2011, and that quickly proceeded to see, you know, iron ore go from $150 a ton to lower than $50 per ton in the following 3 or 4 years. And so while it may have not been the perfect time to enter the industry, we learned a lot, and we were able to learn the value of a dollar and how to run a startup enterprise in that sort of environment. I think it permeates our culture. You know, personally for me, it was an opportunity to work with a lot of companies who had to find ways to save money. Instead of buying a new pump, people were refurbishing, you know, mechanical seals on the workshop floor because they couldn't get funds provided to them for a critical spare. And it was really that period where, you know, we learned quickly that scarcity does breed innovation in the industry. And we've taken that lesson, and we've tried to apply it to how we've approached the development of our group of companies here in Vancouver.
I'm sure I've experienced it. I'm sure you have. When there's a generational gap, you're talking about, you know, let's say that 35 to 45 gap that's in the industry, and then, you know, someone sort of in yours and my age range, and then you have the next generation up of that sort of 50 plus age. That there's an approach where there's an expectation, hey, you're young, bring energy, bring fresh ideas, a new way of doing things, but don't take us over a cliff. And there is this balance that when you're sort of in our age range, that you and how do you sort of, is that a conscious approach that you have, or how do you sort of deal with it? Because I'm sure that you're presenting and working with people that are in that 50 plus or 60 plus category, and you have to bring energy, bring new ideas, but also not make them feeling like, okay, we're heading into territory we just can't even consider. Do you sort of have to make a conscious decision on how to approach that?
Yeah, I mean, I think change just for change's sake is not necessarily a good thing. I think there needs to be a foundation in data and design for those sorts of decisions to really be made based on recommendations that we put forth. And what I've found is, you know, that's required us to really flush out our investment cases. We need to be able to backwards and forwards, upside down, be able to understand the solution and how it could potentially positively impact the bottom line or efficiency of a company in order for it to be considered. So and personally for me, I've been able to try and overcome this through data-driven activity. You know, not making claims, but showing data and providing backup to those claims is really the way that we've you know, attempted to overcome those sorts of limitations on adopting new technologies. And I kind of consider it as a fun enterprise. You know, whenever we inflict change, it always kind of validates the long road. But it's been an interesting couple of years with a little bit more rapid adoption, honestly, of some of the stuff that we've been developing. So it's been an interesting ride. Yeah.
We started this, of course, CIM, and actually, I want to mention your role with CIM before we wrap this up here. When we launched, I guess it's over 2 years ago now at CIM on the Vancouver trade show floor. We launched the Crownsman show, and then ended up in a partnership with CIM for Mining Now. There was a lot of, even in the last couple of years, I have noticed a tangible shift in the industry. And the only way I can judge it, because I'm not on the ground, is just by people that I talk to. And even their willingness to have conversations with organizations like ours who are going, now we're a YouTube show, right? I mean, that's just, it's a strange thing for some people. And I'm noticing that people are a lot more receptive. But you made a good point. You have data. We stuck with it for a couple of years. You've been around since 2017. You've got data. You've got analytics. You're not just coming in with fresh ideas and, we got a great idea that we're going to spring on you. You're actually coming with something. And I think that is a responsibility for the next generations to essentially do your homework.
Yeah, I would agree. And, just to add to that, I've got a lot of senior technical review on our team that I would consider deep mentors, and an idea is nothing without the operational foundation of some folks that have spent 45 years underground at the ore pass, and so our approach has been looking at these innovative designs, but really trying to base them with fundamentals from senior leadership in the industry. And we've got a great technical directorship that is within our group, all from numerous decades in operation, working in other jurisdictions, whether it be sub-Saharan Africa or the Sudbury Basin. So having that experience from a technical senior leadership perspective is integral for us to keep our ideas and our innovative design grounded in reality.
Very well said. And to close off, I think CIM, they're part of the logo of Mining Now. They've been a part of getting this show off the ground, and you are you're the vice president of the Western District for CIM. Can you talk a little bit about their role? And I mean, there's no way around it. That live events being shut down, and that, I mean, it hurts everybody. It's hurting CIM, but they're still very active, and people like yourself are still providing that support. And so I'd love to just spend a minute to touch on some of the activity going on with them and your role, and just talk about their importance within the mining sector.
Sure. Yeah. I've been involved with CIM for nearly 6 years now. First in a role with the Vancouver branch as sponsorship chair, raising money for activities within the branch, and then later as co-chair for 2 years of the Vancouver branch. And since May, I've stepped in as first year VP Western District, and have had the opportunity to contribute to national council and sort of national level activities with the head office in Montreal and other VPs and liaisons throughout the country. As you say, it's been an interesting year for CIM. Unfortunately, as you're well aware, they had to cancel the trade show and conference that was intended to be held in May, and they're looking forward to probably a better 2021 with a blended format, both in person if people are comfortable, as well as an online digital format for the technical compendium. I would just say, we recently as CM celebrated a pretty significant milestone and anniversary. This association has been around for over 100 years and has been a stalwart in the association of mining professionals throughout Canada. I know that there's a big effort within the organization right now to evaluate their positioning in the industry, particularly because in-person events are a little bit more challenging than they used to be. But I would urge those of you that are still gainfully employed, continue your membership with them, because as we all know, I think that will be paid back in spades based on the efforts that I've seen internally within CIM to develop new digital content, webinars, and they're quickly evaluating how to keep people engaged with new formats and sorts of different ways that people now can consume content digitally rather than in person.
Yeah, and I was talking to Martin Bell, who books a lot of the trade show on the trade show floor the other day or a couple days ago, and he should have a course for how he facilitates all that. It's unbelievable. I don't even begin to understand how he books all those people and facilitates all that. But he's still so engaged. I was talking to him, I left that meeting feeling like, okay, we're good to go. They've got a team there that is so engaged with the industry. They've been around so long, and this is not the first challenge that the mining industry has been through. And there is a time too when we have to make an effort to be engaged with each other. When we started a few years ago, I knew maybe 3 or 4 people on that trade show floor. And now because of CIM, the amount of people that our company is connected with, that's all facilitated through them, or a lot of it started out with them, even you being on the show here. So it's very important. And I hope people really do show their support in the industry, because we're going to want it when we come out of this. We're going to want a place to go. We're going to want places to network and to actually be able to shake people's hand at one event and all that stuff. We're going to want that back. So I hope people do provide support to CIM right now.
Yeah, I think you're correct. People are craving that personal connection, and it's really been interesting to see how CIM's attempting to maintain that through the sorts of travel and distancing restrictions we're currently experiencing. But I'm similar. I can't wait to the first trade show floor again. So
there'll be a lot of beer, I think.
I would think so, yeah.
Thank you very much, Cameron, for coming on the show. I hope this is the start of dialogue, of updating about your company and what you're doing, because your company really is doing some good things and very much due to your leadership. So thank you for coming on the show. I hope you enjoyed the interview, and we'll consider coming back on Mining Now at some point.
Absolutely. I appreciate the time.
Thank you, Cameron. Thank you, everybody, for watching the show. That is another episode of Mining Now. We were a little bit quiet for Mining Now for a while, but now we've got multiple shows being released. The industry is in gear, and yeah, it's not without challenges. We all know that. It sort of goes without saying, but I appreciate people coming on, talking about the exciting work and the technology that's being integrated into the industry. There's so much to learn. I hope you keep watching. Recommend your next guest. Who would you like to see on the show? Please subscribe. Let our sponsors know that you're seeing it. It's great to have support of organizations like CIM, Savanaugh Equipment. I'm going to forget other sponsors, so I'm just going to stop before I offend anybody. But thank you, everybody, for supporting us. Thank you for supporting the show. Keep watching. Talk to you on the next episode.
Thank you so much for watching. Please remember to subscribe to our YouTube channel and follow us on Facebook and LinkedIn. Also, if you would like to be a guest on the show, or if you know someone that should be a guest, please contact us, info@crownsman.com. Well, thank you so much for watching, and thank you to all of our sponsors, CIM, PowerZone, and Savanaugh Equipment. We will see you on the next episode.